welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? We're so glad you took time to come and be with us today, and I think you're going to really enjoy my guest. If you haven't met me before, I'm Karen E. Osborne. I'm author of Getting It Right, Tangled Lies, which just came out in July, a murder mystery. You'll like it. And my new book, the next one, is called Reckonings, and it's coming out next year in June. But my accomplishments are pale next to the wonderful writer that you are about to meet, who has done such prolific work after a full career. So let me introduce you to him. Hey, Joseph.
Hello, how are you?
And then he'll tell you about his books and his life and all of that. So I'm just going to read a little introduction about him. His name is Joseph Lewis, and he had 3 books come out, 3 on the same day in May. It's a trilogy. He calls it his Lives Trilogy, Lives Trilogy, which he'll talk to us about. And that was after a career, 44 years as a teacher, coach, counselor, and administrator. And that's something that Joseph and I have in common, because I came to this after a career of 40 odd years in not-for-profit work in higher education. He is the author of 7, count them, 7 novels, using his psychology and counseling background in crafting psychological thrillers and mysteries. And not only does he have 7 published, but number 8, which he will also tell us about, is coming out in January, Blaze In and Blaze Out, which is available for pre-order right now. All right, so welcome, Joseph.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am just so excited to talk and hear about your journey. So you have 7 novels and 8th one coming. It feels like you're really writing fast.
Well, I honestly, not really. I kind of, even though I've never gone through the process, it's very much like giving birth, from the idea or conception of an idea to the actual publication. It's about 9 months to a year for me. So, I started in 2014 with my first book out, Taking Lives, and then shortly thereafter came the trilogy from a previous publisher. And then I was fortunate enough, when I received the reversion, the rights back to me, Black Rose Writing, who is my current publisher, said, we want them. And so they re-released them, all 4 this last May. So I was really pleased.
Yeah, that is so phenomenal.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. I remember how hard it was, all the querying and hoping, and something would happen. And then when Tangled Lies came out, 1 week later, Black Rose got in touch with me and said, do you have another one? Well, yes, I do. I happen to have another one. I was like, whoa. So I totally get it. And 8 books. I want to be you when I grow up. 8 books. So when you think back to your childhood, tell us about what kind of reader you were back then, and did any of that have an impact on the writer that you are today?
I was a voracious reader way back, and what's really interesting is when I was in school from grades, I want to say 1 to 4, I was at the lowest of the low. I was in the worst reading group. I was in the worst math group. I was, in one teacher's words, I was one of those Lewis kids. I come from a family of 10. I'm the second youngest. And it was not until my 6th grade teacher, Sister Joseph Marie, who really sparked the spark. And what she'd used to do is take these little note cards, and she called them story starters, and she would have maybe 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. And the idea was, if we had any extra time, after writing a test or after doing an assignment or whatever, we could take one of the cards, any of our choosing, and the idea was to finish the story. It was not for credit. We didn't get, any kind of gold star or anything like that. It was really just for fun and entertainment. And she would talk to us about it and things like that. That's really what really lit the spark. In 1987, I had a short story written called Dusty and Me, and that was in magazine. And I wrote the first draft of that after watching the movie Stand By Me for the first time. It just, that really
Great
just,
movie.
yes, it just really hit me. And so I was able to use that. And then, see, when I was a counselor, I worked with the Wetterling Foundation for stranger abducted and sexually exploited kids. And the idea was I was an adjunct educator. And so I would speak to kids, I would speak to parents, I would speak to educators, whoever would have me, and how to keep kids safe, how to keep themselves safe. But then I got married, and my wife and I adopted a little guy from Guatemala. He was 7, and we had our daughter Hannah. And instead of seeing Johnny Gosh or Eaton Patz or Elizabeth Smart, I started to see my son Will and my daughter Hannah. And so I had to kind of take a step back. And my idea was I needed to give back. I wanted to tell those kids stories, things that I've heard as a counselor, things that I've heard as a coach. And so when you're reading Taking Lives or Stolen Lives or Shattered Lives or Splintered Lives, though it is a work of fiction, many of the stories, incidents, vignettes in those books are
Really
very much,
happened.
very much
Really
real.
happened.
Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. Um, I just want to go back for a second, and you were
Sure.
talking about, this teacher who just invested in the kids, wanted to
Yes.
help their imaginations and stuff. And I find that so many of us, there was somebody, some
Yes.
person who saw something in us. But the other thing that really struck me by what you said, oh, he was one of those Lewis kids.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of what that teacher did.
Absolutely.
Just making assumptions
Mm-hmm.
and lumping kids together. I remember a teacher saying, my husband and I were teenagers together. And as we graduated from high school, one of the counselors told him to not even apply for college.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even, why would you apply for college? You won't get in. Go find a trade. And here's a man with a master's degree, and so both things are so true.
Yes.
The kids that we dismiss, one of those Lewis kids,
Yep.
ones that we invest, and the teachers who like to invest.
When I was a principal, I used to tell my teachers, you need to be that teacher, because there are going to be so many kids that are going to walk through the hallways. And we had about 2,000 kids in my last stop as a principal. And there were so many kids walking the hallways that were not connected to anybody. And statistics show that if a student is connected to at least one adult in the building, the chances of success are that much higher. And my plea, my many times throughout the year, was that you need to be a difference, a positive difference in the lives of those kids, because sometimes you are all they have.
I'm falling in love with you. Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more. You mentioned your trilogy, and I want to hear about Blaze In and Blaze Out. Just give us a sense of the protagonist, if there is a one protagonist, if this is Alex Cross kind of a story, or if there are multiple. Just give us a sense of what the story and the lead character is about.
The it kind of shifts a little bit from the trilogy and prequel to the more recent books of Caught in a Web, Spiral into Darkness, Betrayed, and then Blaze In, Blaze Out. My main characters are actually adolescents. It's one reviewer called it a patchwork family of adopted kids, and she nailed it. And that's really what it is. Each of them has their baggage. They are not perfect by any means. just as most adolescents, most you and I and anybody else who's listening, we all went through that as adolescents, finding out who we are and why we are and what we are. And that's really what these kids are doing. But stuff happens in life, and stuff happens to these kids. And I wrap the core around a thriller mystery. And generally it deals with crime, deals with detective. The kids make mistakes, but they're good kids. They actually help solve crimes without really even knowing it.
Mm.
Um, and it's in it. They're the main adults in there are a group of three cops, Groff, O'Connor, and Esselman, and then an FBI guy by the name of Kelleher. And those four guys interplay with this family. It's seven boys and a mom and a dad, a blended family, and it's their lives that kind of take off in various directions that are the reader kind of goes, now what? That kind of thing.
Oh, I love that. That is so intriguing. And the other thing that I think we have in common is caring about what happens to kids and kids that are left behind and
Yeah.
kids. And we're both adoptive parents, I understand. So
Oh,
yes, we made one and we adopted one, and it sounds like that's what you did too.
yes.
That you made one and adopted one. Yeah, letting out books inspire people while entertaining people,
Yes.
is so important. So you have this new book coming out. Are you working on something else?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Of
yes.
course, of course. Tell
Yeah.
us about it.
The book that's now for pre-order, Blaze In, Blaze Out. You see, my books take place in Wisconsin, which is my stomping grounds. That's where I grew up, born and raised. Though I taught and coached in various states, now I'm living in Virginia. That's always home to me, Wisconsin is. And I use the last place I taught, Waukesha North, as the school that these kids go to. And George, who's a full-blooded Navajo, comes from Arizona, and he became part of the family by happenstance. And it was George's grandfather that had a huge influence on who he is, what he is, and how he is, and then how he interplays with this particular family. So in Blaze In, Blaze Out, it takes place in the northern woods of Wisconsin, and it's hunting season. And so in Wisconsin, in the north, when you're deer hunting, that kind of thing, you wear blaze orange, and you have to have 80% of your body covered in orange. And so you blaze in and you blaze out. Once you're in, then you can take off the orange and you can wear camouflage. But the title comes from that, blazing in, blazing out, but it also has a double meaning, which has a lot to do with the story as well.
Yes, yes, it's a great title.
Thank you.
It's an eye-catching title. I really love it. One of the things we like to do also is recommend books besides our own
Mhm.
for, and you should buy all of his books and read them. But
Please,
besides that,
please.
yes, it's really important to us. And don't forget to review. We really love it when people take time to write a good
Yes.
review. Thank you for that. But we also like to recommend books for our audience to read. And I wonder if you had any books that you've read recently, or maybe it's a book that you read a long time ago that you would like to recommend to our audience.
My man, my go-to people, that helped me on my journey. And I really believe what Stephen King said and wrote about the importance of reading to writing. Um,
Mm.
and I liken this particular analogy that reading is to writing as weight training is to the athlete. You really can't do one without the other. And so what I read in my genre, I read King, I read Patterson, I read Baldacci, I read John Sanford, and a little bit of Michael Conley. But some books that really had an influence on me were Lord of the Flies,
Mm.
because it talks about kids surviving, and that's what my characters tend to do, although they do have adult supervision, thank God. Um, Peter Straub wrote a book called Ghost Story. And it's a little bit slow. It took me about 100 pages to get into it. But once I got into it, I could not put it down. And I also couldn't read it at night.
Mm.
It's a real scary kind of a book. Um, Stephen King's The Stand. That was, again, that good versus evil, which really has a large part in my writing. I like that interplay that, there's as much good as there is in the world, there's also some evil. And it's up to us, to live out the good and maybe wipe out that evil. So that's kind of a philosophy that I have as a person, as a counselor and as a writer. And you'll find that in my books. So I would say, Lord of the Flies is one of my all-time favorites. The Stand, Ghost Story. Those are my three that I just read over and over again.
Yeah, and I agree with you. If you're not a reader, you can't be, it's hard to be a good writer if you're
Right.
not also a voracious reader. So
Yes.
yes, yes, yes. So how could, if our folks wanted to find you, they want to learn more about your books, they want to order your books, they want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Okay. Um, I'm on Facebook. I have an author page. It's facebook.joseph.lewis. You can find me there. I have a blog that I write. It's an inspirational blog. It's nonfiction. I try to give a truth and a story and a meaning. And it's at www.simplethoughtsfromacomplicated mind sort of.com. Uh, and then I also have an author blog. It's jrlewis author.blog that you can find. And so those are three ways that they can find me. I'm on Twitter at jrlewisauthor. So I'm around. If hard pressed to not find me if you
If you're
are
looking,
looking. Yeah.
yes, if you're looking, and it's J.R. Lewis.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, because it turns out there are other Joseph Lewises out there in the
Yes.
world. So
Yes,
don't
there
forget.
are.
Yes. We want to thank you all so much for being with us. And thank you so much to Joseph R. Lewis for joining us today. As you know, you can find me on YouTube, Karen E. Osborne. There's a lot of Karen Osbornes out there. Karen E. Osborne. And my author page, Facebook author page is Karen E. Osborne Author. And my website is www.kareneosborne.com. Thank you again, and I hope we'll see you next time on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing?
Thank you.